the sun went, but I don't know when I can film this video again. So here we are. What are we doing? We are doing our final quarterly wrap up of 2025. I didn't read that much at the end of the year, so hopefully this video is not 45 minutes or something. Last time, for my last video, I had to edit like over 45 minutes worth of footage. Also, I did cut bangs, but they got banished for this video. Also, I don't know how I'm gonna not talk about Heated Rivalry this whole video. I did read those books at the end of the year, so we will get to them eventually, and I just need to be patient. But my grand total books of the year was 51 books, and the last chunk I read, only one of them made it into my top 10 books of the year. So this isn't going to be the most positive video ever, but we're going to stick with it, okay? Okay, so the first book I finished in October was the first book in the I Am Number 4 series. This is my childhood sci-fi book. Like, I know people have, like, Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, Maze Runner, all of that stuff, Hunger Games. This was my series. So I was in a little bit of a reading slump because I didn't like evenings and weekends, and I read that right when school started, and then I was just reading books for class. I was like, you know what, we're gonna get through this, and it really revived me. This is about aliens from a planet called Loreen, and they got powers and stuff, and they have to be killed in order of the Lorik charm number system that was put on them. And John Smith is number 4, hence the I'm number 4, and 1, 2, and 3 had been killed already. Okay, hang on. I don't know if I could have explained that more poorly. The reason they have to, like, be killed in order is because they're being hunted by a different alien race called the Mogadorians from Mogador, and they had already completely taken over Lorraine, and so the elders sent them to Earth and cast the Lorik charm on them so that they could only be killed in order, in hopes that it would help them survive longer. And there's like 10 of them. Well, there's 9, and then you find out there's a 10th one. But yeah, that's the whole reason they're running from everything. The Mogadorians are hunting them, and they're trying not to die. And so they're a little bit stressed, obviously. And so him and his, like, protector, Henry, like, end up in somewhere in Ohio, and then stuff goes down. But this is really good. I honestly wanted to start like a full read through the series. I started the second one, but then I was like, I got stuff I need to read that I haven't read before, so we skipped on that for now. And the next book, I started this in the middle of September, but it was for class, so I didn't finish it until the middle of October, and that is Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys, or Riz, I don't know, people were saying different things. So this book is really interesting. I've read another book by her. I read Voyage in the Dark for my Women in Lit class over summer, and this is a sort of prequel to Jane Eyre, but obviously it's not written by Charlotte Bronte. So if you don't know what Jane Eyre is about, I haven't read Jane Eyre. I do want to read it. I just don't have it in my possession at the moment. Jane Eyre is about Jane Eyre, and she meets Mr. Is his name Mr. Rochester? Yeah, and they get married and whatever. But he has this wife named Bertha who's crazy and lives in their attic. Wide Sargasso Sea is about Bertha. And so Jean Rhys kind of took this concept of this, like, mad woman in the attic and gave her a story. And so her name given at birth is Antoinette. They're in the Caribbean, her and her family. Her mom's kind of crazy. Her dad, it's a whole thing. A lot of the black people, like, hate them in the way that the other white people hate them because of, like, again, Antoinette's mom is crazy, and they lost all their money, and Antoinette's, like, kind of a crazy child, and then she gets sent away for a while, and then she meets Mr. Rochester, and then it follows their, like, marriage and stuff, and how she gets turned into Bertha, and he, like, casts her away as this, like, insane woman. And it's a really interesting story about, like, how white people who are discriminated against can, like, create different relationships with black people, especially during this time. Like, that just, like, kind of wasn't heard of. Like, Mr. Rochester is freaked out by Antoinette, like, hugging Christophine, who is, like, one of their maids, I think. And he's like, I would never touch them. And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, these are my people. Like, I have been treated better by these people than any white people I've ever been around. And it's super interesting that an author would write a prequel to something, like, separate from the author. Like, Charlotte Bronte's been dead, you know what I mean? And this came out, when did this come out? 1996 is when it came out. So, yeah, Charlotte Bronte been dead. So, this is something I didn't know that people did. So, I'm not even sure if there's another example of this besides, like, Wicked. Not that I don't know anything about Wicked. We're not talking about Wicked right now. But, yeah, I enjoyed this book. It does make me want to read Jane Eyre, which I kind of wanted to in the first place already. But, yeah, it's super crazy the way that Mr. Rochester is just kind of like, you're Bertha now. And she's like, what do you mean? So, yeah. I don't know if I particularly recommend this book. It was nice to read for class. Next. Oh my god! And then I read probably one of the worst books I've read this year. And I was baited by the cartoon cover. It is Room Hates by Penelope Ward. I'm gonna show you the original cover of this. This is the original cover. Ignore my broken ass phone. I would never read something with that on the cover. Like, I was baited. And, like, so the summary is, like, Justin and Amelia, like, grew up as best friends. They both have, like, kind of sucky families. And, like, her grandmother or whatever has this beach house. And, like, the reason they know each other is because he lived, like, right next to it. And when the grandma dies, she leaves keys to both of them. And it just starts this... Like, they, like, kind of have a relationship, like, not really, and it's messy because he has a girlfriend and whatever, and then she gets pregnant by some rando, and they, like, kind of start raising the baby together, but they also are just, like, the weirdest people on earth. I read it really quickly because I was just so shocked by everything that was happening, and she also, like, keeps it a secret from him that she had a baby until, like, he, like, comes into the beach house, and he's like, is that your baby? And also, they only have sex, like, once in this book. And it seems like, which is fine. I'm not advocating for more of that, especially in this book. But you'd think that it would be happening more, and then it just happens once, and it's really bad to read. At least, maybe they had fun. I did not. And this next book I read, I got it as an advanced reader's copy from Barnes & Noble because my bestie works there. And it is Grape Juice by Eliza Dumas. And so this book is super short. It's 175 pages, so more of a novella. And it's about, what's her name? It's about Alice. She goes to France for this, like, wine-making retreat thing. It has to do with her job. I don't know. And she ends up in this, like, little romance moment with this guy named Henry. And, like, the sense of community that's built between all of these people that are on this trip is so fascinating and well done and really interesting. And, like, they all have a good relationship with one another. They're all gaining different things from other people. And it's so fun and light. And then she starts, like, having feelings for Henry and they start hooking up. It's very rare that I read a short book and I, like, genuinely crave more of the story. But this had so much room to be a full-fledged romance. Like, I genuinely think that this book could be turned into, like, a one-season show. Like, it was so good. And the way that every single character was really well developed, and even though the love plot kind of fell flat because of how short it was, you could see that the good roots were there. And I wish we would have just let it happen instead of making it 175 pages. Like, this could have been like a 400-page romance, in my opinion. And it wasn't even, like, the romance wasn't even what was driving the story. It was all of their relationships with each other and how, I mean, I don't even remember any of the characters' names, but the imagery of, like, the French countryside or wherever they are, and the way that they truly are there for the art of winemaking, which you just wouldn't think would be fleshed out in a 175-page romance book. But I am so sad that this book isn't longer, and I need it to be adapted into a show. Like, and it's just, it was really good. I think I gave it, like, 3 stars just because it just didn't do it all the way. But I loved every single character in this book and every single little storyline. And like I said, the romance, like, kind of fell flat a little bit just because it's not there very much. But, oh my god, like, this was so good. This was probably one of the best things I read in the last quarter of the year. And it needed to be longer. I also just, it's such a cute book, and it being called Grape Juice is so fun. And I have a tattoo for Grape Juice by Harry Styles, so it was fun to be like, look at us calling wine grape juice. I don't know. And then I read a poetry book for my poetry class. Like I said in my last video, I don't believe in speaking poorly about people on the internet. So we're not going to talk about how this conversation went in class. And we're also not going to talk about this poetry book. The reason we were assigned this is because my professor had a class with this guy and didn't like him. Which is probably the craziest thing ever. Especially because he's just like a 60-year-old white guy teaching poetry. Like, so the drama is kind of hilarious. But this is Husbandry by Matthew Dickman. Matthew Dickman, if you see this, I will not be outing the professor unless you email me directly. But it's kind of hilarious that he did that. And, yeah, the drama. But this was fine. I am not the target audience for this. It's kind of about him. Like, all of the poems are about him, and he's in the process of or is actively divorced, and just the challenge of that with children and whatever. But also every single poem is structured like this. They all have the same exact form. Okay, then we actually read a very, very good book in my lit theory and criticism class. I got this copy from the school and it's like taped to the nines, but this is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Where do I even begin? This was probably one of the only books that I've ever even known about that could open people's minds the way that this book did. So this is about the okay, I am gonna butcher these names. I never actually had to say them out loud. The Umafue tribe, of the Igbo people. I might be wrong about that. It might be switched. I was a little bit confused, and we didn't totally flesh out the way the tribes were working. Maybe that's our bad. But this book is about colonization from the colonized point of view. And it follows... Oh, why don't I know his name? Oh, it follows Okonkwo. He's the main guy of the whole story. And he's big and powerful. He has many wives, many children. But he's also horrendously abusive. But we're not defending Okonkwo. Don't get me twisted when I say any of the next words. The reason this matters is because this book shows that Okonkwo isn't special for doing anything that he's doing. He's a man living in his tribe with his culture and his people and his traditions. And the white people come and they completely take that away from him. So, like, even though we're not meant to like Okonkwo, like, the whole point of this is that he's nothing special. He is another abusive, powerful man that is just trying to live his life. And let me look up, there's some theorists I want to talk about, because this is from my lit theory and criticism class. This is me using what I learned in college. Say good job. Hurston. Okay, we're going to talk about, what is her full name? I don't know. But, Zora Neale Hurston. So she talked about, I actually didn't fully read her stuff that we were supposed to read, and honestly I had a hard time digesting most of it anyway, so I'd usually read it, not really know what was going on, and then we would flesh it out in class. So, but she was talking about, where is it? She's talking about representation in media and how it says, this is from the slides of my professor, it says, in Hurston's society, what publishers want to publish is the story that keeps white Americans in the dominant position and depicts black Americans as lacking complex internal lives. So, that along with, who else did we talk about? We were talking about this idea of, like, the exceptional black person and how a lot of stories where black people are the, like, main characters and the protagonists, they're these exceptional people. Like, an example of this would be, Hidden Figures, which is about, like, the black women that ran NASA, basically, and how that is a story of, like, the exceptional black person. It's like, you don't get to see, like, the day-to-day normal, what is going on with this typical black person. Like, that was specifically talking about black Americans. Here we're talking about Nigerians and the Igbo people, but the part I want to talk about is Zora Neale Hurston's idea of how most stories are not giving people of color, especially black people, internal lives, and, like, they're there for the plot, or they are in fact that, like, exceptional black person that I don't know what theorists talked about that. They all blend together. I do my best. But anyway, that's what I'm talking about with Okonkwo and him, like, kind of sucking really bad. But the point is that it's about just this awful guy in the same way that any other story might highlight an awful white guy or, like, you know, or an awful straight guy or something. Not that this is gay at all. But you see the way that the Igbo people really underestimate what the white people are capable of accomplishing when they come. They're like, we don't know what we're doing, we're gonna leave you alone, which is beautiful because they could have killed them on the spot. They could have done what they were trying to do to them, kidnap them, put them into their culture, but they let them be, which is everything to me. But this, that, and the other happens, and Okonkwo gets banished, and he has to go back to his mother's, I don't remember. I was also a little bit confused in that, but he gets banished for like 7 years. He's in exile for something he did. And when he comes back, he's like, what the hell happened here? Because a lot of people, including his son, who he didn't even like his son very much. He was like, he's like a woman because misogyny. That's the other thing. It like shows how misogyny just kind of was everywhere and no one was above it. And again, humanizing Okonkwo, and he is just a normal man. But he comes back and everyone has been taken into Christianity by these white men and even are going by like their new names and stuff. And he's like, what happened here, guys? That's crazy and bad. And they're like, your gods aren't real. Like, you shouldn't be afraid of them. They're not real, da 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 da. And I mean, there's just so many. I mean, I wrote 2 papers on this book, actually. So yeah, like, I mean, just the way that Okonkwo just is so underestimating them, and then he comes and absolutely destroys their lives. And it ends with Okonkwo taking his own life because he just, it's horrific. And also we talked about how Chinua Achebe wrote this as like kind of a teaching text, because you're not going to get this from any other books. I feel like maybe, I don't know every book ever that's been written, but I was so glad that we got to read this book, and it was such a rich, intelligent conversation that we were having in that classroom. And I love my professor very deeply, and I hope that only good things happen to her for the rest of her life. Next book I read was Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. I love this man's nonfiction. I really am not a fan of his fiction, but I read The Anthropocene Reviewed last Christmas, I think it was. And that and this are 2 of my favorite books. If you don't know John Green, my Shayla Johnny is obsessed with tuberculosis and also obsessed with death. He has OCD and anxiety, and that man is always thinking about death. Like, and once he learned about tuberculosis and the way that it has absolutely ransacked our entire human existence, basically, he wrote a book on it. And honestly, this book is less than 300 pages. I thought this man was going to release like a 500-page book about tuberculosis. Like, I was shocked to see that it's literally less than 200 pages. But this mostly follows his experience with this young boy in Sierra Leone, what's his name? Henry, and his experience with tuberculosis. But it goes into the history, and it talks about specific people. Like, he talks about like his great uncle or something and his experience with tuberculosis, which was really interesting. And I mean, I don't even know what to talk about without literally telling the whole story. Like, Henry doesn't die, which is beautiful. Oh my God. It talks about the way that tuberculosis shaped beauty standards and still does. Like, when he says everything is tuberculosis, everything is tuberculosis. Like, John Green was right when he said everything was tuberculosis. And this, I mean, it's kind of a hard read. It's kind of like really depressing, low-key. But if you need a nonfiction book, this right here, read this. It is very good. And it's so incredibly poetic. Hang on. He says something at the beginning of the book that was just like, diva. It just humans trying to cure sickness and stuff. It says, but we cannot save those who we love from suffering. This is the story of human history as I understand it. The story of an organism that can do so much but cannot do what it wants most. It's so poetic, and it's insane because it's a book about tuberculosis, and then John Green just is hitting you with the hardest lines ever. Then I read a book that I didn't like. This is Dirty Diana by Jen Besser and Shauna Feste. This book had a lot of potential to be good, and then it wasn't. It's about Diana and her husband, and their relationship's like kind of falling apart a little bit. And she's like thinking back to this photographer that she knew when she was younger. And okay, sorry, my mom called me. Yeah, so it's just like kind of the way, like, about Diana and her husband's relationship falling apart, and it goes back to I don't know the photographer's name. Is it like, starts with a J, I think. Is it Jasper? Yeah, Jasper. I don't know, I think it had a lot of potential, and it has a second book too, which is like very interesting for like a contemporary fiction to like be like a series kind of, or a duology. Didn't do it for me. I think I feel like, I don't mean this in a bad way, I feel like this book is for millennials or like Gen X women, and it's not for me, because it's like a lot about like sexual freedom and liberty, and Gen Z's really good at that. So I don't know. I just didn't totally do it for me. I read a book that I really wanted to love, but I just didn't totally, and that is People Watching by Hannah Bone Young. This follows Prudence and Milo, and Milo's got a messed up family. Prudence's mom has dementia or Alzheimer's, I don't remember which one, and they meet on accident. And I think Hannah Bone Young is really good at integrating real life struggles into her romances, and that was not what I had a problem with. I just didn't feel the connection between Prudence and Milo, which I think it's just like he sees her and he's like, I want her so bad, and he's like, oh, he's hot, and then there's not enough like drama in between them meeting and them getting together. Like, all the dramas with their families and the way they kind of overlap, and it's not really with them specifically. And I think that's what like pulls you a little bit away from that romance, is you're so focused on their families and their trauma that it doesn't get to them quite as much as you would want it to. I do think they're really lovable characters. Like, Hannah Bone Young can write a lovable character. I have not like disliked any of her main characters, even the books by her that I didn't really love. Also, there's texting in this book. I don't know if there's texting in her other books. I don't remember. But that just always turns me off pretty bad. And then I read The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I finally got to this. I bought this at least a year ago, like minimum. I think I understand why this book is so popular and why Sylvia Plath in general is so popular. I didn't particularly love this, not because it wasn't good. I just don't think it was like really the story I was looking for at the moment. This follows, what's her name? Is her name Esther? Anyway, it just follows her like insane mental health struggles and her lack of conformity to societal expectations. Like, she doesn't want kids, she doesn't want a husband. And yeah, she's really depressed and whatever. And again, I see why this is one of like the books that people tell you to read, but I just didn't particularly like it. And I'm not gonna sit and rip apart The Bell Jar. Don't think it's necessary, but it just didn't hit home for me. Again, don't blame me. Didn't hit home for me. Bear with me. Do not come to me and try to kill me. This is just my opinion. The next thing I read was, hang on, Heated Rivalry and The Long Game. So if you don't know what Heated Rivalry is, let me tell you. Heated Rivalry is the second book in a 6-book standalone hockey romance series. Do you know what any of those mean? Standalone is when it's a series where you don't have to read every single book in order or at all. Like, you could just read one. In this case, you should probably read Heated Rivalry and The Long Game. Like, you can't totally read Long Game by itself. Long Game is the 6th book in the series. Heated Rivalry is the 2nd book. The reason this is popular is because it was turned into the best show that has ever existed in the entirety of the world. It has taken over my whole life. I don't have my physical copy of The Long Game yet because it's sold out everywhere. No one has it. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, nowhere has it. Like, you cannot get your hand on these very easily. So I haven't even bothered with trying to get The Long Game. I'm just going to wait till it's at my local Barnes & Noble. My bestie can snag it for me. So The show, okay, so this is about Shane and Ilya. They're like the hockey stars ever from the second they get drafted and before that. But they meet in 2008, and this book and the first season ends in 2017 or 18. I don't remember which one it is. Either way, it's like 10 years from the moment they meet to the end of the first season and the end of this book. And so the show, I'm going to try to not talk about the show too much because that's not what we're talking about here. Me when I lie. The show, again, probably the best thing in the entire world. It is the only thing I have been watching and stuff. But so I finally read the book. I couldn't wait for my physical copy. I bought it on Apple Books as well as The Long Game. So here's what I'm going to say. This is one of those very rare circumstances where the books are not better than the show. And I think a lot of it has to do with Connor Story and Hudson Williams, who play Shane and Ilya. Ilya and Shane. They are genuinely some of the most incredible actors I've ever seen. I'm not one to sit here and be like, oh, this person's a good actor and this person's a bad actor. But when you see them, like, in an interview versus in the show, like, it is impossible to think that they're the same person. Some of the things that are different that Jacob Tierney, is he the producer? Is that the right word? He did that change from the book to the show was also incredibly well done, because there's plenty of parts that are like exact copy and paste from the book to the show, or there's a lot of scenes that are pretty much the same, but there's like tiny tweaks in dialogue, or maybe one of them says the thing that the other said in the book, or just the way they do it is a little bit different. And it matters so much because in this book, like, you kind of are not able to totally see how much they have feelings each other just from the beginning, whereas the show, you see it from like literally the day they meet. In the book, it takes like so long to see that it's like they're not just obsessed with each other because they're rivals and they're hooking up and it's like kind of crazy and insane and like they only see each other a couple times a year. Like, you see from the start in the show how much they are just specifically want each other. The book is just different. And I also think in the book, like, they're less likable. Like, you're kind of not fully into their story, I feel like. Maybe, like, this is my bad, but I wanted to read this before I watched the show because it came out in Canada and then didn't come into the US for another couple weeks, and I wasn't able to get the book. I think if I would have read the book first, I would not have watched the show. So maybe I would have, but this show just is doing something for this story that is so incredible. And like, I mean, do I need to explain this to you? They meet, several years later they hook up, and then several years after that they're in a relationship. But again, they're hockey players, and it's, I mean, I don't know when gay marriage was legalized in Canada, but the end of the first season is only 3 years after gay marriage was legalized in America. We're not even talking about Russia. That's illegal there, actually, as of right now, I'm pretty sure. Oh, yeah, Ilya's Russian, by the way. Ilya's Russian, Shane is Canadian. And Shane is also canonically autistic, which is another thing that is not very present in the books. That doesn't really come across in Heated Rivalry, in my opinion. I think it comes across a little bit in The Long Game, because in The Long Game, they like kind of make this plan of like, we're gonna do XYZ, and then if it fits in, we will come out. But then Ilya deeply struggles with that because he wants to come out and tell everyone how much he loves Shane. But Shane is like, here's my plan and I'm sticking to it. And that is like honestly the most I feel like we see about Shane, like truly being autistic. And maybe I'm gonna reread them. I've already started rereading this. We're not even gonna talk about that. But I'm gonna go into it like seeing if that was actually written into it or not, or if that's just kind of like how she wrote it and it's just not very obvious. But yeah, the show does a really good job at portraying that in the way that the book doesn't. There's like just a couple of scenes too where like in the show, just this much is different, but that much matters. And again, I think like Jacob Tierney, Connor Story, and Hudson Williams are entirely to thank for this. And we would not be here if this story was never written. But yeah, The Long Game is really good too. I don't want to go into that too much just because, actually, no, we are going to go into it. So in the first book, in Heated Rivalry, it's like this 10-year long hooking up, kind of love each other, kind of aren't accepting it, blah, 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 blah. What is really well done in general of the story is there's not any shame around the being gay part. Like, Shane definitely has a part where he's like, oh, I don't know, like, this is kind of, there's literally a part where he says this is super gay when him and Ilya are hooking up for the first time, which is really funny. But Ilya's bi, and then he's just sleeping with everybody, to be honest. So it's like, for him, it's more of a sex thing and less about like, oh, I'm gay. He's like, no, I just need to keep having a bunch of sex. And he talks about that with his therapist in The Long Game, which was, oh my God, his relationship with his therapist. Like, if that's not in the second season, I'm going to have a big bone to pick. But, yeah, so there's no, like, just the lack of shame in the story, I think, is what makes it so good. And also, like, there's no, like, tragedy throughout any of this. Like, they have, I mean, Ilya's mom is dead and his dad dies in Heated Rivalry. All of the, like, parts about struggling with their relationship have everything to do with them being realistic over their situation as hockey players and Ilya being Russian, and nothing to do with the fact that they're ashamed. Like, they're definitely, like, a little bit embarrassed and they're like, this is crazy, we shouldn't be doing this. But it's not about them being gay. It's about the complexity of them being rivals and everything else. Like, Shane has a little bit of part in the book where he's like, oh, what are we doing? Maybe we shouldn't do this because this is gay. But he's, like, 19 the first time they hook up, so period. You have that. Like, he's like, I mean, what year was that? Like, 2011, 2012? Like, do that, diva. It's totally fine. I just didn't like the book very much. I don't think it's totally well written, but obviously the base of the characters in the story was there. And just, like, I personally can't think of any other book or show that gives such a well wrapped up ending at the beginning of at least this book. And the second book has a pretty good ending too. We're not going to talk about that. It's so good for them. Like, even, like, in the second book, when it's not a secret that they get outed in the second book, I don't think. But, like, even then, it's just, like, it's not even that tragic. It's more like it sucks that they didn't get to come out on their own terms, but they work with it so well. And it's, like, all of the tragedy in the book has nothing to do with them actually being gay and actually loving each other and being in this long-term secret relationship. And it's just, like, they're just being realistic about their situation, and it's so good. And yeah, I do think The Long Game was better than Heated Rivalry. Again, I'm going through a second reread. Did not love Heated Rivalry as a book very much. I don't know. I love that you get to see Ilya's interiority in the books, because I feel like the show's a little bit more Shane focused. Not a little bit. It's definitely more Shane focused. And so it was nice to see that. But I felt like even Shane's interiority, it wasn't very good, like, for most of it. Sorry, I, like, feel bad because this is one of my favorite stories ever, but the show's just so good. So, but yeah, so Heated Rivalry and The Long Game were the last two books I read in 2025, and they did not make it in my top 10 even a little bit. So, but I created a list of my top 10. This is in no particular order. I have Everything is Tuberculosis, Persuasion, A Gathering of Shadows, Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, Funny Story, Trumpet, A Man Called Uva, The Adults, Old Man of the Sea, and Blue Sisters. I think we are going to knock off The Adults to have Things Fall Apart. The Adults is by Allison Espach. But yeah, I don't know how I haven't actually started a new book. It is January 5th as I'm filming this video. I just restarted Heated Rivalry because I have so many books on my TBR that I truly want to, like, be in love with. And I don't think they stand a chance with how much I love Heated Rivalry right now. That is my final wrap-up of the year. I read a grand total of 51 books. Hate an odd number. I tried to read another book after I read Heated Rivalry Long Game, and it just wasn't going to happen. So, but yeah, that's that. Pretty mid-reading year. I didn't like most of the stuff I read, to be so honest. So that kind of sucks. So cheers to reading more things that I actually fully love in 2026.